Motown Records was founded by Berry Gordy Jr. in 1959 and became one of the most successful independent record companies in American history. They managed groups like the Supremes, the Temptations, Jackson 5, and solo acts like Stevie Wonder and Marvin Gaye. Their formula became the basis for many future Western pop groups such as the New Kids on the Block or New Edition in the 80s, and groups like NSYNC and Backstreet Boys during the 90s. Female idols such as Britney Spears or girl groups such as the Spice Girls or Destiny's Child were also huge during these decades. Although the term idol was rarely used for these artists, labels would target a young audience and market them in a very specific way, similar to how Asian idols in K-pop and J-pop are managed today. There was also a heavy emphasis on performance for these groups. Singing was important, but dancing and stage presence was just as important as vocal ability. This kind of overtly curated music group formula slowly went out of fashion in the 2000s, but it didn't completely disappear. It evolved into a different form, like with Disney Channel child stars moving into pop stardom, such as Miley Cyrus, the Jonas Brothers, or more recently, Olivia Rodrigo. The pop star system may have changed throughout the decades, but ultimately, Motown established a formula that became the standard for creating music sensations. Along with Motown artists, the 1960s was a decade of pop superstars like the Beatles and Elvis Presley capturing the hearts and minds of teenagers worldwide. This was the state of pop culture that influenced Johnny Kitagawa to scout a group of boys playing baseball in Tokyo to form the boy band Johnny's. He went on to create one of Japan's biggest production agencies, Johnny and Associates, and created several of Japan's biggest boy bands, including SMAP. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Johnny Kitagawa's reputation, he's basically the godfather of the idol system and contemporary idol culture in general. He's also a well-known creeper and abuser, but that's a whole nother story. Johnny Kitagawa standardized a formula in creating and marketing his famous boy bands. His company would hold open auditions and recruit young talent as young as 10, 11 years old to become Johnny Juniors. These juniors would live together in a dormitory and attend a sort of idol school to receive training in becoming professional performers. They would also perform alongside established idols as backup dancers and even appear on TV shows as amateur performers before their major official debut. By the 1980s, idols have become a mainstay in Japanese media, not just with boy bands but with female idols as well. This decade is known as the golden age of idols in Japan, where idols received the most public interest and were everywhere from the music charts to TV to commercials. Their popularity began to wane, however, around the latter half of the 80s, with the economic downturn and the public losing interest in audition programs. They were still around, but not nearly as popular as they were before. Across the small pond around the same time, South Korea was going through a media revolution of their own. After 35 years of Japanese colonial rule in the early 20th century, Korea regained independence in 1945 after Japan surrendered to the Allies in World War II. This was followed by the Korean War a few years later that split the nation in two. Although South Korea was technically a democratic country after the split, in reality, they were ruled under one dictatorship after another for the following decades after the Korean War, and their media censorship laws reflected the extremely tight control these political regimes had over the country. Since the 1950s, media influx into the peninsula was strictly monitored and controlled. Most Western music was banned for being a bad influence. Japanese media was banned due to their history of invasion and colonization of Korea, and Chinese media was banned because of China's support of North Korea during the Korean War. After decades of civilian protests and activism, things started to change in the 1980s, first politically and then culturally. Censorship laws began to lift, and foreign media started to rush into the formerly closed-off country. New sounds and styles began to reach the Korean youth, and pop culture began to change. In 1992, an alternative hip-hop group called Seo came into the public eye with a new type of sound that the Korean public had never heard before. Keep an eye out for this guy. This was a turning point in Korean music and basically the birth of contemporary K-pop as a genre. In 1995, Korean record producer Lee Soo-man created SM Entertainment with an in-house system to train and manage their talents. Sounds kind of familiar, right? Lee Soo-man saw the major successes of idols in Japan and basically adopted Johnny Kitagawa's formula and brought it into Korea. And similar to Kitagawa's approach, Lee targeted the teenage market. However, unlike Seo rebellious image that brought them their popularity among Korean teens, Lee went for a more wholesome, clean image with his artists and created groups like HOT or SES, who are now often referred to as first-gen idols. These first-gen idols pretty much became the blueprint of all K-pop idols to come in the future, and many of their songs are still covered and re-released by current idols now. So Lee Soo-man and SM Entertainment pretty much dominated the charts in Korea during the 90s. But remember Seo? Well, one former member of Seo founded his own agency in 1996 and called it YG Entertainment. Their first major group was Sechkiss, who are also one of the first-gen idols in the early days of K-pop. However, while SM mostly kept with the clean, bubbly pop formula, YG soon shifted their focus to a more hip-hop heavy sound and is credited as the label that popularized hip-hop in Korea. One of their biggest acts was hip-hop idol group Big Bang, who debuted in 2006, and girl group 21 in 2009. But by far, their biggest act now is Blackpink, who debuted in 2016 and have gained global recognition since then. Rewinding back to the 90s, a singer named Park Jin-young founded his own record label in 1997 as JYP Entertainment, just a year after YG Entertainment was founded. They went on to create huge boy bands like 2AM and 2PM, and girl groups like Wonder Girls and Miss A in the 2000s and 2010s. Their current lineup includes groups like ITZY, Stray Kids, GOT7, and TWICE. But what happened to J-pop idols? During the rise of modern K-pop in South Korea, idols in Japan were experiencing a decline in popularity. After the economic downturn, the idol industry went into a winter period of stagnation. The idol label was often rejected by artists with a similar aesthetic, and the idol industry went more underground, receiving less mainstream attention. In 2005, however, AKB48 debuted, and this changed everything. The AKB48 formula as idols you can meet shifted the entire concept of idols in Japan from a type of young, skilled professional performer to the more approachable amateur entertainer who sings and dances. Unlike the super polished and curated professionalism of K-pop idols, the appeal of J-pop idols was that they were not these unreachable ideal goddesses, but were the cute girls next door who performed for you, and you got to grow with them as they sharpened their performance skills over time. The fan experience became the core of the business model, and idolhood took a much more interactive turn. A successful J-pop idol doesn't have to be the best singer or dancer or even the hottest person. They just have to be the best at connecting with their audience. Along with AKB, the idol industry overall diversified into many different genres in Japan, with virtual idols like Hatsune Miku gaining popularity and fictional idols from anime and games also gaining traction. And although J-pop idols were never really aiming for the global market in the first place, unlike K-pop, it still continues to have a sizable overseas fan base with its heavy ties to the anime and manga industry. So while J-pop idols mostly aimed for the domestic market, K-pop had its eye on international recognition from the get-go. The South Korean domestic market was tiny compared to their neighboring countries of China and Japan, so K-pop idols aimed to get into these foreign markets pretty much from the beginning. One of the first and most successful crossovers came in the early 2000s with BoA under SM Entertainment, with a singer gaining enormous popularity in both Korea and Japan. This led to more K-pop idols debuting in Japan and eventually expanding into the Chinese market as well. Over the 2000s, K-pop and K-drama's popularity grew beyond East Asia and into Southeast Asian countries, and labels also started to include more and more foreign members. But then came BTS. BTS debuted in 2013 under Big Hit Entertainment, and while their debut was received well in Korea and in Asia, their breakthrough into the Western market was the first of its kind. While many K-pop idols had attempted to cross over into the American mainstream, and performers like Psy received worldwide viral glory thanks to the internet, BTS's popularity among Western audiences was something never before seen by any other Asian music act before. At the time of BTS's debut, the Korean music industry was dominated by the big three labels, SM, JYP, and YG. BTS was the first group that music producer and composer Bang Si-hyuk created under his new company, Big Hit. Because Big Hit was brand new at the time and didn't have as strict of an idol formula established like the Big Three, the members were allowed to have more freedom in expression and more say in the music they were making. BTS's success was so huge that what was known as the Big Three music labels in Korea became the Big Four in a matter of a few years. They've since rebranded as HYBE Entertainment with several sister labels under it, managing acts like 17 and Le Sserafim, and their newest superstar group, NewJeans, under the label Adore. Fun fact, Minijin, the creative director behind NewJeans, was actually scouted from SM Entertainment and was responsible for the visual branding of groups like Girls' Generation, SHINee, FX, and Red Velvet. Despite her impressive CV, however, she's also been involved in a string of controversies, which I'll cover next time. Thanks for watching, and let me know your thoughts if you like or dislike K-pop or J-pop, and please like and subscribe for more.